Howdy, and welcome back to the channel. I am, of course, Matthew Pisgatti, and we're talking about evaluating new crypto protocols and projects. Now, I get a number of comments in YouTube especially. Have you heard about this small project here? Have you heard about this new project? And I get those in Telegram as well. And 9 times out of 10, I've never heard the name of the new protocol or project. The main reason is at the moment, myself personally on my journey, I'm not keeping my eye out for a lot of those. If there's something extremely promising, I will investigate into it, or jump on it, like just to see if it sounds incredibly rewarding. Of course, I'm gonna go take a peek. But I think that's my first note on all of this is know what your strategy is, know how much liquidity you have at the given moment to know if you even should be looking at another project. Do you have any funds free to even throw that way? Now, let's say you do, and you are looking for something new. Your next kind of thought process might be how much you're trying to throw at something, and then depending on the protocol, um, is that amount enough to where I'm actually going to ROI in a short amount of time? I'm going to get my money back. If it's kind of sketchy, I want to get in and get out, probably, right? So all that kind of comes into play. Now, what I will say is, although I try to diversify, I've only diversified into the things that make the most sense to me, that seem the most trustworthy, the most like they're going to have some longevity. I don't really like trying to, what I would say is like a day trade. I'm not trying to get in these tokens and ride them up and then sell them. That's a lot of pressure for me, having a day job, having a regular job. I'm trying to get in these projects that have a good interest rate, have a good rate of return, and I can ROI before the thing dies, but it's not necessarily based on just holding a token. And I think the best protocols are not based on just holding a token. But we're going to talk about evaluating these projects because there's so many. And I mean, sure, I could take a look at each of these that are recommended, but I don't find that really incredibly helpful to others, only because I'm not offering financial advice. You really have to do your own diligence, your own um, investigation into these things, and then decide if that's a good investment for you or not. But what I can do is make a video like this where I'm talking about how I might evaluate a new project. So, for instance, I saw many people talking about the faucet, about DRIP ecosystem as a whole. The animal farm had just launched, I imagine, but I started off in the faucet and I put a very small amount in there. And then I ended up hopping over to the DRIP garden. But, with any of these things, one of the first things that you're going to hear is somebody recommending it, right? And so I think you kind of start there. Whoever recommended it, whatever source it was it a YouTuber? Step one, are they getting referrals? If they're getting referrals, automatically, you may not trust anything they say. I think that would be a good base level of trust, unless it's your closest friend, you've known him 20 years, and he's given you a lot of great financial advice. Even then, he may be wrong because maybe he's getting referrals, right? And it helps him no matter what. And he may think it's a great project, but consider your source. That would be my tip one. Consider the source, and are they getting some type of reward for it? I think that's why I try not to just outright shill projects on YouTube. I don't want to just be promoting projects for referrals. And in fact, if they only require referral, like if you can only succeed based on having referrals, I really don't want to be in those projects if I can help it, because that really is scammy. Like, I mean, it's not scammy. I get it. Everything is technically a scam. Every system, economic or otherwise in life, if it's transactional, it requires new capital. Whether that capital is fresh labor or sweat equity, whatever you want to call it, it always requires new value coming into the system. So in that way, all of life is a Ponzi. So I'm not going to say that any of these are more or less a Ponzi, but some of them don't have the same longevity, the same lasting ability to stay around. And especially if it's something you're going to stake your money into and you can't get it back out immediately, like something like the faucet, you really need to investigate and take all that into account. So step one, we're going to consider our source. Why are they promoting it? And do they have your trust or not, is where I would start. And then I would start investigating the project as step two. me personally, I come to these sites and I look at the UI. Um, Faucet, I design websites a good bit. Maybe I have more of an eye for this. Faucet, the Drip network, didn't look that bad to me. When you first get here, if you have Ripple enabled, this animation on the backdrop, if it'll load for me. Oh, there it is. I don't actually like this. This strikes me as kind of cheesy. It's not professional. It's not desirable for something I'm doing financials in, right? I don't really like this ripple effect. That's why I turned it off. Um, I don't want to trust my money into like something like that. Now these are all kind of like games. So that being said, there's an element of fun. I mean, obviously they're theming them in fun ways, and that's okay. And I get that this was forked off of another site, Flow, I think, which I haven't really looked at, but I'm guessing it's incredibly similar. So I look at the site next, the UI. Does it look like everything's in a good spot? Is it easy to use? Does it make sense? If it doesn't quite make sense, we're going to get to the white paper next. But start with the UI. Does it look like something trustworthy? For instance, you draw on your past experience. I was already familiar with the drip faucet, so when I got to say Splassive, if it'll come up with a search for me, oh, it's already in my URLs. If I were looking at Splassive, I immediately was turned off from staking. I'm not saying you shouldn't hold the token. I mean, not now. Obviously, they had a big issue, but I'm not saying don't hold the token of a thing like that if you just want to write it up, pump and dump. But I was instantly able to tell that it was exactly, and you can see their massive issue here. I could tell that it was exactly a clone of Drip, like down to the white paper. They just changed a few things, but all the verbiage, the words were verbatim. So it instantly struck me as something scammy. They did zero new work, except that it's on the Avalanche network. That's different. And they tried to increase the percentage per day, which struck me as scammy, right? So check the UI, see how that looks to you. Does it look like a direct copy of anything else? If it is a fork, expect it to look similar, but then you need to analyze what changes they made and were there any improvements. But so let's say step one, oh yeah, step two, UI. Step three, white paper. Go to whatever documentation they have. Now for Drip, this is a PDF. It's relatively informative. It's got some fun theming. I think that's okay if it's done in a professional way. But each section is covered relatively well. It tells me, how the mechanisms inside the contract are going to work. And one thing we're keeping an eye out for in the white paper or in the documentation is how do they make their money, right? Where are the funds coming from that are going to pay out the new users? And for Drip, one of the big ones here is, well, the reservoir helps add some liquidity, but whale tax. What are these extra fees and taxes? There's taxes and fees on certain things for certain transactions, and depending on how much someone's holding, they get taxed a greater amount. So that's part of the sustainability for this system, as well as you have a cap. I wouldn't trust something that says it's just unlimited till the end of time, unless they have a really good way of constantly bringing in new capital. If they're reinvesting your funds into something else, which a lot of these protocols do, especially a lot of the nodes projects or like the nodes as a service projects, they'll invest your money into nodes or whatever else it is, and those things make money in their own way. So that's where a lot of the funds come from. Or if they're staking it and adding liquidity, that you get paid out from transaction fees. I think from the white paper, the main things you want to take away are how do they make their money? How long is that going to last? Like, does it sound sustainable to you? If they're offering, say, like 20% a day, because I saw that one that Super BNB or BNB 48 or whatever it was called. Obviously, it was like a rug pull. It lasted like maybe a week, and they took off with millions, and that's how those scams work. But yeah, so you need to understand: does it look like it has some longevity? Is it going to last a while? Where are the funds coming from? If you're not quite sure on the longevity, does it have a cap? Like Drip obviously has a cap. You can get up to 365% of your funds that you put in the deposit, and that also applies to your compounded ones. You also have that, but there's a cap. There's a maximum amount of Drip total. I want to say it's 100K. Is it 100,000 Drip? But there's a cap, and once you hit that amount, you can't get any more out. So whales can hit a certain amount, they're going to max out, they're going to get that full rate out of there. But as long as the rest of the contract works properly and you're getting those funds in from fees from the new people that are coming in, and all their transactions back and forth, whether it's a sell or whatever, what have you, you know that there's some sustainability there. And so you really want to do your due diligence on that, look into it, investigate it. Roadmap's another good takeaway, by the way, from a white paper, if they have it in there. I know that Seifu does. I know that DRIP does. It talks a lot about the improvements. Now, this is kind of out of date. There's a lot more in the Telegram, and we'll talk about Telegrams here in a second. But yeah, that'd be step 3. Read through the white paper. Make sure you understand it. If you don't understand it, find some user guides on YouTube. If nobody else is talking about it, that could be a big red flag unless it's a very, very new project. But you could probably find someone giving a rundown or a nice Medium article. Medium has a lot of crypto articles because people get paid for posting them. So, of course, that's where they write them out. A lot of information there. So see if something like that will help you understand the project better. If you're actually interested in it, you think it has any type of potential, then you want to do as much investigation you can from all angles, right? This is how we're trying to get an idea of what the project is. So hopping over to something like Seifu, for instance, they go into a lot more detail, and I appreciate that. So they break down every single component in their white paper, and something like this, like just right off the bat. Remember that all these things are sentiment based in a way. I mean, they have to have underlying mechanisms that make sense. They have to work. The code has to work. It can't have exploits in it. You're not going to know a lot about that, but we'll talk about those types of audits here as well. That'll be one part, and then but this goes a long way into sentiment. If the white paper looks professional, if the website looks professional, it goes so far towards creating trust because no one wants to trust something that looks unprofessional or isn't well put together. That's just basic. Yeah, here's a nice example of a roadmap, by the way. You can see the Seifu guy checking these off along the way. And he's got actionable items and improvements that add use cases to the system. And so that's why we're also looking for a roadmap, right? So that's the next step. That's the next step I would have you look at. When I'm looking at a new project, what are the use cases? And people define use cases in all types of ways. I mean, I think the best example, really, like what makes a good use case, is that someone's going to use that token for something else. So, say maybe I can use DRIP to buy NFTs on this third-party site. Maybe I use DRIP in my online poker game. Those are the tokens I pay with and get paid in. Maybe that works like that. Maybe it's a slot machine. Maybe it's some other type of game that's like pay to play, and I pay with it in DRIP, or I get paid out in DRIP. Like those are use cases that some third party, even if the same developer creates it, really, but some use case that people are going to make use of. Can I use it to buy clothing? Or like there's that charity, I think that who is it? That Jonathan, the Drip Farm guy he works with, I think they accept donations in DRIP, perhaps, which is a pretty cool use case there. If your token was added to major platforms where I could pay for things with it, like physical goods, that's a cool use case. But there's a million examples of use cases, even just linked within the same ecosystem. DRIP as an example, with like the animal farm. I mean, there's dogs, there's pigs, there's all these things, but like I have to hold dogs. You have to hold dogs to be able to get referrals in the Piggy Bank. What about DRIP? In DRIP, you have to hold BREAP. You have to hold BREAP to, which is just the Binance REAP token, the Binance chain version of the REAP token. Forex was also involved in that project or responsible for it. He drove the price of REAP up when he made that requirement that you had to hold the BREAP for being able to get referrals. You couldn't get your downline referrals without holding that REAP token. And I was really just trying to find a chart real quick here to see what REAP was looking like. But that's the point. That's another type of use case where it's required. You need that token for something else. I'm trying to, so you can see where that BREAP exploded here on the chart alongside DRIP because people wanted those downlines. They needed to hold at least two of these to get DRIP referral downlines from their referrals. So that created a use case for it. So that's a big thing to look for. Is there any use case? And if there's not, what are the use cases down the road? Are they going to develop some new game or do this or do that? There's a lot that can be made as a use case, but you need to evaluate that yourself and see if it's viable. Because any of those things could boost the lifespan of a token as well as just the value of it in general. So if it's something where you're not staking, if it's just a token you're holding, it could increase the value quite a bit if a really good use case arises. So all of those things are great to evaluate. Next, I think we were talking about audits. We were talking about audits. Seifu may have one linked. They were actually having some trouble, I think, with their audit. They got into kind of a snafu with them, with Surtech at least. But they do have one from, who is this? Solidity Finance. Okay. So if the company has audits, and does DRIP have one listed? I was going to say, if they have audits, usually it's linked somewhere on their main page. And so it's always great to take a look at those. The audit should be a third-party entity. So it's a third party. I know that EMP has some. It's a third party, like RugDoc and whatever this is, Guard something. I don't know what this symbol stands for. It just says Guard. Maybe it's just called Guard. But you could read through the audits. So these should be a third-party company, and these third-party companies, that's their job. They're getting usually paid to look through the contracts, and you can make sure that these contracts match what you're actually interacting with, by the way. That's always good. Double check that type of stuff. But you can see what risks they found, if any, and then if they were resolved. So if here it shows no issues were found at all levels for EMP, so that's great. But then check the audit. If there's multiple ones, check both of them. If there's 3 or 4, check them. See what they say. Were there high risk issues? Were there low risk issues? And did they fix it? Because the audit will usually say that as well. Like, yes, they've provided feedback and they're going to correct this in the future, or it's being corrected right now, and here's how. The audits are extremely valuable. I mean, that may be one of the first things you want to look at after the UI. But this is just kind of the order I'm running through things as I think of them, what you should check through. But yeah, you want to see the audit because that is a third-party organization, or it should be. There shouldn't be any kickbacks or connections to the parent developer or company. But that audit gives you that outward perspective without bias to say, yes, the code looks good. They're actually looking through the code of the protocol to tell you if it, at least on the code side, are there any major exploits or issues or some type of loop or things being sent to the wrong address, like they're secretly being funneled off to the dev address. Like, that's what the audit looks for. They can't correct for malicious intent. They can catch some code that's already in there that looks like intentional, but they can't catch, say, a dev ahead of time who is secretly going to buy up 90% when it launches and then sell it off in a week, which can happen, of course, things like that. But they do their best, those audit companies, and give you an idea of the trustworthiness of the given ecosystem or protocol. So I would definitely look through the audits when you're evaluating these different projects. So what else would I look at? I'm not necessarily going to share the screen for it here, but a lot of these have Discords or Telegram. I think Discord is better than Telegram, but I would check, at least for these purposes, I should say, because they can make categories and rooms. So I would actually check their social medias, at least those 3 that you see here on EMP. If they have a Twitter, I would check that. How often are they giving updates? Do they seem like really scammy updates where they're just trying to get new capital in? Or are they giving real substantial updates that relate to how the contract is developing? Because we'd prefer the latter, right? We want that. That's more trustworthy. We want to know what's going on with our protocol. We want to have regular updates, and we want to see that the dev is actually doing something. Get into the Discord and Telegram. What is the overall sentiment? Now, you can't listen to this solely, I should say, because if you look in like Animal Farm Telegram, the Drip Telegram, like you're going to see a lot of negativity right now because the whole system is kind of system. The token price of Drip is on the way down, and Animal Farm has been paused for a moment due to some developer snafus. They're trying to get that rolled back up. You don't know what situation you're walking into. I mean, you should read through what people's frustrations are. If there's a lot of negative sentiment, that's not something to just dismiss. Likewise, I would look on YouTube for a similar type of feel. But a lot of these projects are sentiment based, right? So get in the chats, see what people are saying. Maybe message people on the side, although they don't really like that. They'll probably assume you're a scammer and block you. But get in there, see what people are saying, see what the overall opinion is about the system. And for those who are positive, make sure they're not just being positive and dropping referral links, and that they're not just getting money as a promoter, because that's a red flag for that person. You can't really trust them as much as you could as just one of the average users in there. But get in those chats and see what they are saying. That is really important in this whole research process. Besides all that, you want to see when the project started. If it's brand new, I mean, you really don't have a lot of hope in evaluating it. You can look at the mechanisms, see what they're promising, and then throw money into it or not. But it's really hard to tell, right? I mean, just if it's new. If it's something like, say, a drip, like if it's something like Drip Faucet and the drip token, I mean, you have a year's worth of data to look at. It's been going for a year. That's a lot of sustainability, longevity there, which is impressive in this space. So you're not going to find a lot of projects like that. That's kind of rare. Um, but that can help you evaluate how long has it been around. Does it look like it's going to last? Um, those are just a number of things we're going to evaluate on these new systems. I think at the end of the day, the real problem with any of this is that people use the words like the Wild West, like the anarchy, the freedom that crypto represents, that DeFi represents, this decentralized finance space. There's no regulators. There's no one coming to save you if you invest in the wrong project. If you have enough to throw around to all these new projects popping up, chances are one of them is going to pay off really big. That's just how a lot of these work. But it is a gamble, and I feel like that needs to be drilled in really hard. That it's a gamble. You could lose your money on any of these things at the drop of a hat, and we've seen that from people. Just it was an exploit. Oh, it was an exploit. They took all our money. Sorry. You don't know if that's true. You don't know if there was actually a hack. Yada yada yada, and you can't really account for those. I mean, you can get a feel for the developer. That's probably another thing you need to be doing. Is he in the chats? He or she, are they in the chats? Are they on YouTube giving updates? Are they giving AMAs, like interviews to explain the process? Ask me anything. Are they giving those interviews on live chats? Because if they are, that's great. That's a great sign. I like to look for that. Like in the EMP Telegram, they give AMAs every single day. Every day they do a live stream when the countdown and the detonator reaches 0 to see who's getting the daily lottery, who won the lottery that day. And I think that's kind of neat. I like that. That gives me a lot of trust and a lot of more assurances in the trustworthiness of the community. If I see those AMAs happening daily, people are actually allowed to freely ask questions. That's a huge green flag for me. These small like startups, these little projects. I'd want to know who the developer is. I'd want to know who the developer is, and I'd like to know where they're speaking. Where can I hear their voice? Where are they giving live updates on the regular? If that's not happening, because we're seeing that with Rex. I mean, Rex 2.0 isn't launched yet, but they're giving a lot of updates in Telegram, and I'm sure they'll do more AMAs when it launches. But we're seeing that with Drip. We're seeing that way a bunch with EMP. We're seeing that with Seifu. A lot of those things, a lot of those few are the ones I'm in anyway. And those are part of the reasons I went with those little protocols, with those little games, because they had a good community. They have a good community that's dedicated to at least giving updates. Now, something like EMP, they're going a little above and beyond, I think, because they're not focused on just giving updates. They're constantly coaching on how to keep the system healthy as a whole so that it does stay sustainable for a long time to come. Since I've gotten in here, they've done a great job of keeping it pegged above the peg amount that they're trying to. They're a ratio. They're pegged to Ethereum, so they're trying to stay at a certain level. I'm clicking all over because I always forget where the peg status is. Yeah, so they're above peg a good bit right now, and that's great. And they coach a lot on that, and they have a whole like academy of videos that are really helpful on the homepage, walking you through how to use their site. They got a link to their Telegram. They want you in their community. They want to give daily updates. Brian Legend from Seifu, he's been doing daily, almost daily YouTube videos. So, like I said, a lot of this comes down to sentiment. You want to see a good UI. You want to see a thorough white paper that looks professional and has all the information you need. You want to understand where the funds are coming from, how are you getting paid. You want something that's not only referral based. That's like going to work for a company that's commission sales only. I mean, unless you can just sell your ass off and just make these YouTube videos constantly or write articles or whatever you do to get new capital, you'd have to do that constantly. And that's not the type of program I'm looking for. But you do you, right? I mean, if that's something you're into and you want to just promote and shill, you can definitely do that. There's a lot of YouTubers that do that. But yeah, where does the trust lie in the community? Is the community supportive? Are they allowed to ask questions? Now, if you hop into like say the Drip Garden, not Drip Garden, if you happen to Animal Farm or the Drip Telegram chats, you'll see kind of a lack of this. There's not a lot of availability to ask questions. There was less. I've seen this be much less of a problem now. They just don't want constant negativity in there, like just bringing the project down. Because, like I mentioned in the last few videos, that's part of the dip as well. You can't get any new capital if every single person that pops into the chat sees a bunch of negativity. I mean, that's pretty common sense. But that being said, I think they're getting a lot better about allowing more questions and the like. EMP's been really good about it. I think Seifu's good about it if you ask respectful questions on the YouTube channel or what have you, or add comments. So that's something to look for. Is the community supportive? Are they on these different social medias? Are they posting regularly? Are they giving AMAs? Are they doing updates? Can you hear the voice of the guy? I mean, are they doxxed like Brian Legend? I mean, he shows his face and his voice, everything. Or are they anonymous? Because that should factor into your trust level as well. And so that's what you're left with at the end of the day is that question: how much do I trust this company, or this developer, I should say? How much do I trust this developer? Do I think they've coded solid projects in the past? Do they have a history? At a glance, do the mechanisms make sense to me? Do I understand how this contract works, how this game works? I understand it's a gamble. I can lose all my money. It's all high risk. It's DeFi. It's the Wild West. But do I trust what they're doing here? And do I understand it? And if I don't understand it, then I need to go watch some videos. Or if they have some help documentation or help videos like the EMP Academy, that's an awesome resource for them. That does them a lot of favors. It makes it easy, a lot of service, I should say. It makes it easier for a self-serve type of model where people can do their own investigation and understand the project. So these are all the different factors that really play in for me. Now, I don't have, like I said, I don't have $50,000 laying around, $100,000 laying around. I see people who have already made a lot in this space, and now they're not as new as I am, and I think they can afford that. Where, oh, this looks like a fun play, let me throw 10,000 at it. Oh, this one looks fun, let me throw 20,000 at it. And they're not just sticking to a few main ones. I mainly talk about the ones that I'm in because I already have money in there, and I'm diversifying the best I can, but sometimes it doesn't really make sense. Like, I mean, if you just put 20 bucks into a project, you can see the percentage return, but you're not going to make any huge amount of money on it. So you can put 20 bucks in and see what the percentage of the return is for you and see if that project is making money. It doesn't give you any idea of the long-term effects, but you can kind of get an idea like, hey, can I put money in? Can I cash money out? Can I sell it properly and make a profit? And if all that works, that may be a good like little test. They tell you like stain remover or something or whatever. They say test a little spot, make sure that works for you before you like soak your whole whatever it is in the thing. So it's kind of like that. Like you might throw a small amount in to do that, but overall, it doesn't make sense to dabble at that level. And I'm kind of finding that out. With EMP, now that I have in the detonator, I have much more in here. I have like 1,800. Like that's still a lot for me, but I'm still not making that much a day. It's a great return. It's a great contract, a great protocol. But it would do much better if, say, you won this lottery and you had like 30,000 in here and you're making 300 a day that you can claim or compound. You can actually do something with that, right? Or like when the drip price swings back up, if the animal farm starts paying out more, I'm only making about like $30 a day right now in there. Just because the amount I have in there is only worth about $800. So a lot of these, you make much. The more you put in, the more you're going to make. It doesn't make sense to test and dabble in 10 different things if you're only going to put like 50 bucks in there. But if you have a lot to play with and you're just looking for things to play with, then by all means, test things out if you can afford to lose it. And that's really the final advice I will leave you with, is that this is not financial advice. These are just the ways I would evaluate and look at a new project and protocol. You have to remember that all these are a complete gamble. Never put in more than you can afford to lose. Don't put your rent money in there. Don't put your house money in there. Don't put your baby's college tuition in there, or your HSA money, or whatever it is. If it's super important and you need that funds, don't throw it into crypto. That's just ridiculous. Too many stories of that, people losing their funds, and it's going to continue to be that way as long as idiots do that. So don't put in more than you can stand to lose, and just do your own research, do your due diligence. That's really what all this comes down to. Look at all the available information you have, and then make a decision, because any of these could rug pull or make a fake exploit or f you over in the middle of the night anytime. That's how these companies work. So, or these protocols work, and that's how some of these developers are. They make a huge killing off of that. It's one of the modern scams. So do all your own research. Make sure you're completely comfortable with something before throwing a lot in. You might start off with some small test transactions just to make sure all of the contract works. Take it all into account, and then go all in if you're going to, or don't. But never more than you can risk. So I hope you guys found this content informative. That's my answer to you asking me to check out any of these smaller projects, is just do your own research and see what looks good to you. Hope you all enjoyed the content. Like and subscribe if you did. I will catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching, guys.